Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. My guest today is Rob Chevez. He's the founder of the Grid Investor Network. It's the world's largest agent-led real estate investment network. He's also the CEO of Caza, a real estate agency with over $1 billion in sales. Very, very impressive, Rob. How are you?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really appreciate you being here. You left a high-paying job years ago to join your real estate future, right? Your real estate career. And obviously you had some success in that. What was it that caused you to shift gears and to choose something different?
Yeah, it was actually a business that I had started with my best friend. And he still owns that business today, and we're still best friends. But that business is a sales headhunting business, and it's a fantastic business. But it's fee for service. So every month you start at zero. And I remember thinking, wouldn't it be awesome to do something one time and get paid forever? And, in that business, I didn't see it. We could have opened a consulting practice, but he didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to compete against my best friend. And so, I asked myself, what vertical or industry could I do it in? And, probably like so many other real estate investors, I picked up a little book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it just kind of took me down this path, right? And I'm glad it did.
Oh, yeah. So you started off as sort of like a traditional agent, right? And then moved into, investor focused. But then you started Caza at some point. Like, why build your own brokerage? Why not just hang your license with RE/MAX or Keller Williams and just, write off their coattails?
Yeah, Benson, I'll give you the play by play, because I actually started when I left that business to be an investor full time. That's what I became. Caza was actually an investment business. It was originated as hey, we're going to go buy and hold assets and like create passive income, right? Highly leveraged income. I read something that's like, oh, you need 20, what was it? Duplexes. And then I could just like retire on I had this fictitious notion of what I was going to do. No real mentor, no real process, no real methodology. A belief that, I was going to do this. And this, just to give you perspective, this was the summer of 2005. And I had gone through the tech recession in 2001 and 2002 and started crawling out of it in that business in 2003 and 2004. And so by 2005, I turned to my wife and I said, this thing feels on the real estate side super frothy. It feels like the dot-com boom and bust. So I think that real estate is going to go through some kind of recession. Not because I understood the economics of it, Benson. I just knew it felt the same. And I told her, if that does happen, and if we are real estate investors, then when the market changes, we're going to put ourselves in a pretty good position. But I'm not sure how bumpy it's going to be. I didn't realize how bumpy it was going to be. That business was paying me a couple $100,000 a year. And then I had just recently bought I was just a new father. I bought a big house, right? And so I was taking a big gamble to go back to zero to learn a whole new skill set. And we started on the investment. The point of that story is we started on the investment side, and we were pure hardcore investors from really 2005 to 2009, right? 2005 to 2009. And we didn't get caught because I understood what was happening in the market. We went to a sub-market a few hours away from where we lived. We bought, small duplexes and triplexes, and we bought them. We'd sell them to investors turnkey. In a couple of years, we had 300 assets under management. We were, fixing and flipping 30 to 40 houses a month. But I didn't have a good model, like a financial model. I was good at generating business. I was good at generating, I was good at sales, but I was terrible at like understanding budgets and P&Ls and all the rest. And I remember telling my wife, I'm like, I don't know if we're making money, losing money, because as soon as money comes in, I'm buying something else, right?
Right.
And I realized I was a good salesperson, but I was just a terrible business person. And not terrible, but you know what I mean? Like I just didn't have good sound financial literacy. And I then started, I was craving a model, to be honest with you, Benson. And I was just at Barnes and Noble and I saw a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, right, by Gary Keller.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked up the book and I read it and I saw it for what it was. It was a business book. You could have taken the word agent out and put in recruiter. It was a business book that created systems and models. And I was like, I don't know who this Gary Keller character is, but he's smart. I could tell he's smart. And so I did go and hang my license at Keller for 17 years. That's where I was. I was with Keller Williams for 17 years.
Wow.
Just Caza became its own brand, right? It was like Caza's its brand.
Mm-hmm.
Keller was our brokerage. And I was always like that odd duck in the brokerage where I was, more investor than agent. And then over time, like really starting in 2009, I was like, I think I want to just build an agent practice, an agent business to create 30, 60, 90-day cash flow and use that money and continue to buy assets and investments. And that really became our model. Like I had the epiphany that being an agent or being a wholesaler or being a rehabber or doing construction, it's all the same, right? It's a sales and marketing business that gets you cash in today. But real wealth is created, by buying businesses and buying assets. And so my thinking changed. And I said, well, I have a huge network of past VPs of sales and sales managers. I should probably like monetize that network, right? And so the agent business really helped us create really predictable 30, 60, 90-day cash flow in the business. And, today our business looks very different than how it started back then. Grid is Grid, it as a network, but we're also transforming it into a holding company that owns Caza sales teams, Sell Simply, which is an acquisition arm of the business, True Home Property Management, so a property management business, Simply Funded, which is our hard money side of the business, MRR, which is market ready remodeling, which is getting properties prepped to go to market. So what we realized is what I learned by going to Keller Williams and being taught by Jay Papasan and Gary Keller was how to run a great small business, right? And so I really credit them with a lot of like my foundational training. And then I left last year, right? I left last year for the dark side, right? I went to EXP and we put our brokerage, our teams there, and it was purely because that model fits us better, right? It just does. Leo Pareja is a CEO who is also an agent investor, right? He was in my market. He was my first broker. He owned one of the biggest hard money lending companies in our market. He established Remine, as you probably know, right? I don't know if you know Leo that well, but he was also the number one agent for Keller, right? And when I saw him make the transition to EXP, and we were looking for the ability to open up into other markets with less friction because the franchise model was causing a lot of friction. It was the first time I actually gave myself permission to really open my mind and listen to the new model. And once I did, I was like, damn, okay, I totally get it now. I understand why so many large teams had made that switch, and which was painful because I love Gary and I love Jay and I love the whole KW family. Just the model no longer served us for what we wanted to build, and we wanted to continue to own assets underneath this this portfolio company that is essentially Grid Corp.
Right. So I didn't know the Grid was so overly encompassing and now an umbrella corporation to all these other initiatives that you've gotten. But it makes sense because that's one of the things that sometimes there's a ceiling to how much success you can have as a company, especially in a specific market, right? Like when people want to scale, they oftentimes will go to new markets, think that they can duplicate the same efforts in a completely different market that's virtual, right? That's remote. And it starts to stretch resources thin. But what you did is you just doubled down in the same market and then you vertically integrated. There's all these different services that you were probably paying for, but now you figured out you could bring them in to the fold and also profit on those.
100%, Benson. But believe me, we did go out of our market. Of course, we saw how hard that was, and we still, right? We're in North Carolina, we're in Florida, like the teams. I have a team in North Carolina. I have a team in now Tampa Bay, St. Pete area. We have multiple teams in the DMV, and moving Knoxville, Tennessee, one of our really successful team in Knoxville, Tennessee. We realized how hard that was, and I said, we could vertically integrate locally, and we could, pump out thousands of transactions here in the DMV. It's really big, so we started saying, okay, let's rethink about what this looks like. Let's vertically integrate these other businesses into what we're doing here locally. And Grid has really been a great funnel for all those businesses. And through the years, we were giving millions of dollars to our hard money lender and millions of dollars to our construction company. And eventually we're like, well, we could find the right who's to run those businesses and give them a good economic opportunity. And so that's what we've done. But we, Benson, like, sounds sexy, but we've made lots of mistakes, right? Like, I mean, lots of mistakes. But I think that that's what, business owners do is they pivot quickly on those mistakes and, change their model and reestablish things. And that's where we are. And we're going to continue to grow that way.
I also like how when you recognized early on that you were making mistakes from the business model side and like running the business side of it, aside from just lead gen and sales, that you learned it first instead of just going and hiring somebody. Like you could have went and just hired a CFO, hired an operations manager, hired some, people underneath you to manage it all. But because you did it the right way, you're now a better manager for those people because you know how to do it right.
That's right. I mean, I essentially threw myself at the feet of a bookkeeper and said, listen, talk to me like I'm in kindergarten, right? And Gary Keller says, hey, there's this chart of accounts in the back of the red book. Like, let's use this chart of accounts and build this chart of accounts for me. Then let's go through and walk me through. And so at the end of every month, I would meet with her for 3 or 4 hours and we would go through like, this is what this means and this how this affects this. And so it took some time to get through. I wasn't naturally wired that way. And then, what's interesting is now I feel like it's one of our superpowers in the business. We're an open book company. We open and close our books at the end of every month. Everybody in our company gets to see exactly what's happening. If we're making money, we're making money. We're celebrating. If we're losing money or if one of the business units are out of model, out of budget, we can have a discussion around that. But that discipline really helped us understand how to build these businesses.
Oh yeah. Which of those new businesses that you've launched have been the most challenging? Because some of them are, aside from just making money from each other, are completely unrelated, right? There's a lot of them are hands-on businesses where you need to know how to swing a hammer or run a construction crew.
Construction was the one where we were like, dude, we've been at this thing for like 6 years and we're just like not making any money. Like, what are we doing wrong, right?
Yeah.
And for anybody listening, one of the things that I started really realizing was none of this is rocket science, right? Like, what you should do is throw yourselves at the feet of somebody that's already built what you want to build and just R&D it. Just whether it's paying to get into the right room, whether it's paying for the coaching or consulting so that they can save you thousands of hours, thousands of dollars, right? And just say, hey, A plus B equals C. This is exactly what you do. Do not deviate from this process. Like, it's not like building a software, something from scratch, like you guys were building, right? Like that's truly hard. These are pretty simple businesses that there's people that are obviously winning at a high level, and you should just go in R&D. And what we were doing wrong in that business, and I had a good friend of mine tell me, and I mentioned it to my partner, my operating partner that was there, and he just didn't listen, or we weren't listening. But he said, you're gonna have a really hard time making money if all of your guys are W-2 people doing work on these projects, right? Like, what's the incentive for them to finish it, in 3 days versus 2 days? I mean, you need fixed pricing and you need subs, and you got to sub all this work out and know exactly what you're going to make. It's pretty simple, right? Well, dude, it took us like 6 years before we actually made that switch. There had to be so much pain. And then, of course, like, once we made the switch, you start making money and you're like, damn, okay, why did it take us so long? And I've just, the mantra in here within all of our businesses today is go find who the best in the world are at doing the thing, and then put yourself in proximity with the best in the world. That's it. Whether it's building an ISA department, it's like, cool, let's go benchmark off of the best inside sales department in the world. Let's go benchmark off of the best, market ready remodeling, like like get a property prep to put on the market company. And if you could pay for that training, pay for it. Right.
Yeah. Well, this is why mentorship and coaching is so important, right? Because, there's the side of the mentoring and coaching business that is a little slimy, right? Maybe some of them were, successful in the past at doing the thing, and then they realize they can make more money by selling coaching and courses. And so it's gotten a bad rap, but you're painting a picture here, which is, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Like you said, throw yourself at the feet of somebody who's done it before and who's done it exceptionally well. And you can overcome a lot of the things that would catch you up along the way just by emulating their success.
Tap into their thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
Vincent, I just got back from Vegas where I attended the 2-day workshop for acquisition.com, right, with Alex Ramosi, right? It's $5,000 for the weekend. And, it's this guy scaled, to $1 million a year, then $1 million a month, then $1 million profit a month, right? And you're like, okay, he knows something, and I should probably go and just put myself in an environment to learn new things, right? Because you're stuck sometimes in this real estate bubble world.
Right.
And we all kind of view the world in a similar way. I remember I talked to my wife. I called my wife and I was like, I thought I knew a lot about business. I was like, dude, I'm dumb. Like, I don't know anything, right? I feel like a child after that. But that's a good thing, right? It's like, cool. Then there's lots of room to grow and continue building what we want to build. And so, never stop growing, never stop learning.
Oh, absolutely. And, people can get comfortable too. So like, you really have to measure, what are your true goals, right? Because you don't have to be the next Alex Hormozi to be successful. Like, you could have a small portfolio and have like a lifestyle business where you're paying for your things and everyone's just happy. You talked about all the heartache and pain that you experienced by growing these other businesses. Obviously, you've got big grand goals, but that's not for everyone. So what would you tell somebody who is like looking at you and they're comparing themselves to Rob Chevez and thinking, well, he's who I want to be like, but are they ready for it? And does it fit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually having a discussion with somebody about that today. I guess I'll answer it this way. I grew up in an environment, I wrestled D1 in college, right? If anybody knows, like, very competitive. So my personality was always been really wired to drive, right? Just since I was young. And I don't know where that kind of comes from. It's just like, hey, I just want to get good at something and I want to become the best at something. And I enjoy the journey of that piece, right? I enjoy the benchmarks. Like, I often say like, wow, I just put my head down and 5 years later, it's like I can't believe it's been 5 years because I'm enjoying what I'm doing. It's kind of like the growth of that. And so I always wanted to figure out what that next mountain was. But there was a point where I realized like, hey, I don't need to do anything anymore, right? I've created what I call the income flip, where our assets that we had the good fortune of buying, Benson, in like 2008, we bought like these assets, along with other assets that we had accumulated along the way that pay for our life. And I did, call it by luck or call it by, I don't know, just being conservative. I did keep my expenses really, really low through all this building phase because I was the product of two back-to-back recessions in my mind, right? Like I went from like the dot-com boom and bust and then literally got out of it and then put myself right back in the real estate bust, right? And so I had this PTSD that things could change very quickly. So let me just be good with where I'm at, right? And not worry about trying to keep up with the Joneses or buying the bigger house or buying like the Bent, like that was all noise to me. What mattered to me was freedom. Like that was a value that I had. I wanted freedom to be able to do just the things that I wanted to do. And so to answer the question specifically, I was like driven, but I was also one of these that understood, hey, if I wanted to take myself out of the game, I could take myself out of the game, but I enjoy what I'm playing. But there was a decision tree I had to make at one point. I was probably in my I was probably like 42, 43, Benson. And I remember saying, oh, wait a second. Nobody told me that having this appetite to build lots of businesses really takes me on a leadership journey, and that there's another way to win the game, like to become free. You don't need to go on a leadership journey to win the game. You could actually just be a really good sales and marketing person, take all that cash, buy assets, those assets pay for your life. You've now unlocked the income flip, which is what Robert Kiyosaki would call getting out of the rat race, right? And that is a great option. That is a great option for people, right? But truthfully, I was so pot committed, Benson, and like I had reinvested so much money in kind of like growth that I was like, I've got to figure this leadership game out so I can kind of grow through people. And I'm glad I pushed because I realized that I now have the unique perspective to be able to help business owners at every step of the way. And business owners in my world are real estate agents. They're business owners, right? Or real estate investors. They're small business owners. And I could identify what's keeping them from where they need to go next because I've traveled that journey. And that for me has been impactful. Like I like pouring into, which is why I built Grid, by the way. Like I liked pouring into the real estate entrepreneur. And so I was able to kind of fulfill purpose and profit and connect those two things. And so, people always ask like, well, why do you do this, right? Can't you, why not retire? Why not slow down? I'm like, ask Warren Buffett that. I mean, Warren Buffett just stepped down like this year. We're like 95 years old. Well, do you think he could have stopped like 40 years ago? 100%. But he was having fun, right?
Yeah.
And he figured out a game that he enjoyed to play. And I think that's what kept him and Charlie so young, right? Like when you think of it, like Charlie died at what, 99 years old, right? And so I hope to be like them one day.
Yeah.
Right? Just keep playing the game. So I don't know if that answered your question specifically,
yeah, it
but
does.
I think everybody has to figure out like what's their path. I just figured out that my path is playing the game and I like playing the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We look to other people oftentimes to see what's going on and figure out different realities. Like our reality is different than others. And I think we live in the best country in the world. There's a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs in the United States. And you had a unique background because your father was a U.S. diplomat, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you were in many different countries growing up. So you're
Mm-hmm.
born in Argentina, you lived in obviously Virginia, Costa Rica, some different areas. So you got a chance to experience these different things, but you did not grow up in an entrepreneurial family. But
Mm-mm.
you experience a lot of different cultures in different countries, in different areas, different maybe like economic backgrounds. And you had a chance of
Mm-hmm.
sampling all those things to create who you were at that point and where you grew from. How did your background influence your entrepreneurial journey along the way?
You know, when you move every 2 years, and you're put into a completely different environment, whether it's like, you know, San Antonio, Texas, or, a military camp in like an Air Force base in California, or Sydney, Australia, or Costa Rica, or El Salvador, right? There's this reinvention thing. Like you got to go in, you got to make new friends, you need to understand like the political landscape. And so when I reflect back at that, it's like that person that's put into a new environment every time and has to learn how to pivot, right? And has to learn how to survive in a way, and then figure out how to thrive in that environment. And I think that even though it wasn't a entrepreneurial household, it was one where there was like a lot of like entrepreneurial qualities in that household, right? Like,
Mm.
and the interesting thing is the thing that kind of tied real estate to all of this, when I really reflect on it, was my parents had to go find a new home every 2 years and make it a home, right? And so we were always looking at real estate. Like we new country, new real estate, new pieces of property. Well, how does that affect the family, right? And then, new culture, new way of speaking, new way of engaging other people. And I think I got very comfortable living in the uncomfortable,
Yeah.
right? Everything was always changing, and I didn't know any better, Benson. Like when you're little, like I didn't come to the States until really live in the States till I was 15 years old. It was always out of the country. Like I would visit, and be in the States for a bit, and then we would fly out and go to another country. And so I did. I got to see how the world thought of us as Americans, right? I got to see extreme poverty. I got to see what real wealth looked like. I had great role models in my mom and dad that were just like very like so good to, just to everybody. And like they were humble and loving and good to people. Because my dad had a lot of power. He could have been a complete asshole, right? And he wasn't. And we call my dad the general because he's just like, I've never heard my dad swear, by the way. Like I've never heard my dad swear ever.
Wow.
And he's like, call him the general because he's just like like rigid in the rule, like in the rules. And growing up, in a rigid rule family, like you don't like it when you're younger, but you reflect back and you're like, wow, like there's so much benefit that came from him making us get to bed. Like it was like 6 p.m. dinner with the family every single night by candlelight, right? Like by candlelight, talking about history and philosophy, and it was like get to bed by 8 o'clock at night, right? Like get up super early. Like it was all of these things that today you hear people talk about what's your daily routine like and what's your schedule like, and you realize the benefit of going to bed at the same time every single night, or getting up early and getting that sunshine in your eyes bright and early, and working out. And these are all, luckily enough, things that my parents just somehow got and gave to us. And so I really credit anything that we've built, both my sister and I, on really the backs of my parents, right? My dad, I think I told you, was the last of 9 kids born, Mexican family, super poor, right? Dad was like a railroad worker, foreman, 9 kids living in Oakland, California. Like, dude, how do you do that? And then how does he become, a consul general for the United States of America, like went to Vietnam, I was like, Dad, you're a badass, right? Like he's just a badass, right? Because to make that mental leap, I was like, how do you go from like a poor family, like just, right? Nobody gone to college, to him getting like highly educated and becoming going to Vietnam and deciding, like, not drafted, like volunteering, going to Vietnam, and then deciding to become a diplomat, for the U.S., having the audacity, to even think that he could do that. And he was like, Rob, the interesting thing is, because it was Oakland, California, and because my parents were so much older, I wasn't raised by my mom and dad. I was raised by my teachers, and I was raised by my siblings. And so I didn't put I didn't put a ceiling on like who I thought I could be, because my teachers kind of poured into me and gave me belief. And I was like, wow, there's so much power in proximity that we don't even know. So going back to your mentors, Benson, right?
Yeah.
Like, who's breathing life into the, around you? Like, try to get around people that are sowing good seeds and breathing life. And so I am blessed. Like, I think back, wow, I had just a unbelievably cool upbringing, and we were and still are an incredibly tight family. And part of that, like being incredibly tight, was it was always our household, like moving, like we had to be a cohesive unit, right? Because it's just us every time we're dropped into a new country.
Right.
And yeah, I have very fond memories of growing up and my parents being my parents.
It's really
I'm
interesting
lucky.
because that same story someone else would tell and have an entirely different outcome
Hmm.
if they didn't, because that's the whole nature versus nurture discussion, right? Like somebody other than you in that same position might have rebelled and
I've seen it.
and
Yeah.
gone against, the rigidness and the rules, and they're the ones that, they act out and they get in trouble, they're in jail, and so there's something that was in you before you even knew different, that where you were able to thrive, and now you have fond memories of it, but others don't thrive in that
Well,
environment.
no, and Benson, that's such a great point, because my sister, she's amazing, and she has a different perspective than I do about like what that was like, right? And you know, she looks at it one way, and I look at it another way, and it's just perception is reality, right? When I look back and think about it, which my personality, and I do think that there was just a nurture piece, and I mean a nature piece in this. My personality kind of thrived in that, being pushed and having structure. It just did, for whatever reason, right? Whereas somebody else, I saw plenty of my friends who were also part of, the foreign service kids, foreign service brats, as they call them. Yeah, they acted out. They had drug problems. They had issues, right? Being the new kid 17 different times, like that's not easy, right? Like that's hard. But I loved it. Like I think back and I was always like, hey, this is a new time for reinvention. Okay, maybe I
Hmm.
didn't get it super right, like here, but maybe I can get it super right there. It almost became like a game for me. So I do think those, to kind of loop it into what we're doing and building here, I think it gave me some valuable skills,
Yeah.
right? How to work with people, what like I would say that I probably have more EQ because of it, right? I learned what when you move into a new school, like I had a model. Like you don't you're not outspoken in the beginning, right? You're
Do you
you're
go in there and you,
quiet.
you punch the biggest guy in the face as soon as you walk into the classroom? Is that what you're supposed to do?
No, no, you're gonna listen. You're gonna
Oh,
watch. You're
okay.
gonna learn.
That's
You're
prison.
gonna
That's
observe.
not, yeah.
That's right. That's pretty. But eventually, the one thing that I was always good at, and this sounds funny to say, but I'll share it here. It's like I could enter in to a new country, not knowing anything, or anyone and figure out a way to become alpha,
Mm.
right? In like 2 to 3 years later. And, you know, if you ever meet me in person, that you would laugh, Benson, because I'm like 5'4", 100, 40, 30 pounds soaking like, but there was just my personality and part of it was being able to like observe and listen, adapt, understand who the players on the board were, how to penetrate, in like certain socioeconomic circles. But also I had an advantage, right? Like, let's be real. My parents had influence,
Mm.
right? So I can't not like factor that into the equation, right? Like
Yeah.
I already had a massive leg up.
I like how you
So
described it, that you didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family, but you were able to gain a lot of entrepreneurial type skills. But really, those aren't just those are like life skills, like
oh
how
yeah,
to be with
yeah.
people, how to listen, how to talk to people. You were selling all the time when you were younger. You were selling yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which translated
Mm-hmm.
perfectly to what, when you got into the business world and you were so good at selling, but you weren't good at the business stuff, you had been selling yourself your whole life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what's interesting is just for anybody listening, I was not. Let me be clear. I was definitely not a natural salesperson. I was good at selling myself, right, Benson? I was good at selling myself, meaning like but sales, like hardcore sales, required a different skill for me, which was rejection.
Hmm.
And I wasn't used to rejection, right? I like things came kind of easy for me growing up, right? I was good at school and I was witty and I was good at sports and like not I'm not half bad looking and like like there's like so there was some like ease that came. But then when I got into like selling, like I never really had experienced no's before in my life, not to the extent that I was experiencing like selling as a recruiter. And so I had to learn a whole nother skill set of like resiliency in like that kind of rejection. And I call it money math. I learned my money math. Hey, X amount of leads, X amount of calls, X amount of appointments, X amount of sales. And it took me about a year to figure that out. But once I figured that out, I realized I would never ever go hungry again. That I understood the pattern of making money.
Yeah, I love it. And so earlier you mentioned you love to pour into people, which makes you a good boss, right? And leader. And this is you've built that into the culture of like the Grid Network and
Mm-hmm.
the Caza group. What makes those unique that you believe that maybe others wouldn't find elsewhere?
Mm. I realized that because one of my core values was freedom, Benson, like I could have written the book Discipline Equals Freedom. Like that was kind of like my mantra growing up. Like if I wanted something, I just got incredibly disciplined around wanting it. And what I realized was I had this unique ability to play the agent game and the investment game and marry them together. And I saw so many agents in the brokerage game just stuck on this transaction treadmill. And I saw I saw a lot of investors even stuck on that transaction treadmill as well, but there were some that were buying assets. And I was like, if I could just bridge this gap in my training, help people understand how to create better businesses, AKA I call them cash machines that ultimately build your wealth machine, that I could make an impact in people. And it was easy for me to see in the rearview mirror because I was that person, right? And so I've always had a unique ability to be able to like reverse engineer what actually happened or how I thought about it and create frameworks. And so I just started creating these frameworks that took hard ideas and made them simple around an explanation as to why it works and how it works. And like one of the first ones I ever created, Benson, was this idea of how you need to zone a market. Like how do you zone is an acronym. I love acronyms. All my team knows this, right? It's like zero in on your target market, which is another word for like pick an avatar, right? But it was like, or a territory or an area. You can't own everything. You like, it goes back to Gary Keller's one thing, but like, this is before I read the one thing. This is before, all of that stuff. I was like, oh, I've got to pick something that I want to be the best in the world at. And then I need to own, O for zone, own the mind share of that like territory or avatar. And there's only three ways to do it. I'm going to prospect for it, I'm going to network for it, or I'm going to market for it. And there's ways to do each one of those. And then I've got to nurture and grow a database. So that's the N in zone. And there's a very particular way to nurture and grow that database. And then the E, through the years has kind of changed, but early on it was like expand and grow. Like from there you can expand and grow a business. Now it means like earn the heart share of your community. So find a way to give back. Like once you learn how to do this, find a way to give back to people, plant those seeds. And so that model of Benson, go pick an area, own it. This is how you do it. This is how you build your database. And this is how you end up becoming somebody that people respect in the community. Like that helped catapult like my business. And I was able to articulate it to my agents or anybody that came into the grid network. And it's the same whether you're a wholesaler, a rehabber, construction, agent, insurance. It's the same play, right? Mm-hmm. There's 12 steps. There's 12 steps to it to actually make it launch properly. And I just, I enjoyed being able to take those ideas and then documenting and then delivering them. And so that makes us unique to the ability to help people learn how to do it. And I realized that, to make it kind of long story short, I realized that all of us, anybody that came into a grid room or anybody that was looking for coaching or anybody that wanted to join a team was wanting a better outcome for their life. And typically what it meant was if I pulled another layer, they wanted some form of freedom, they wanted security. They wanted the ability to have control over maybe their financial outcome, as an example. And so I realized that my value to people in my organization is I take them from self-employed agents or investors to business owners to wealth builders. I give them a definitive path to grow. And there's not a lot of people that articulate that properly in either a brokerage or a team, or even in training out there. And that's resonated with people. And if that resonates with people, then they're a good fit for our culture. We're definitely a growth-minded, goal-oriented kind of culture. And I enjoy doing that, Benson. Like I'm
I
part
can
of it
tell
is
you
because-
do. Like I feel the authenticity about it as you describe it. Like, and that's a key part of this growing, right? You're a worldwide community, and you mentioned all the different avatars, right? Like you are,
Yep.
Agent, investor, but you mentioned these other exit strategies or roles that people do in wholesale, fix and flip, buy and hold, agents, like all working together in this one community. But if this was fake and you were just selling high-end courses and not delivering any sort of value back to the community, it would have fallen apart a long time ago.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
I realize
a lot of this has been tried before, right? How many communities have you heard of? These REIAs and these groups, and everyone's trying to build a community now, right? Especially with the technology now, it's so easy to communicate and connect online, but they don't last. They fall apart.
Yeah, they fall apart because they don't have, I created this, like, again, another framework, but I call it Power Grid OS. Like, there's this 4 Ps. It's like, what's the purpose? What's the process? What's the productivity? And what's the profit, right? Like, there's these buckets. And, a lot of people don't understand, like, they can't tie the actual purpose of why they're doing it, right? Like, why are they really doing it? Are they just trying to make money? Well, like, that's empty. That like eventually that's just empty. And what I realized along the way was like probably we created another framework. I'm full of frameworks, but at the very top of that framework is what I call impact. 7 levels of freedom framework, and there's like impact at the top. I realize that some people want to impact their church, and some people might want to impact their school, or some people. I was like, man, I want to impact real estate entrepreneurs. I was like, that's my impact, and like, how would I do that? Well, I would do that through a delivery system like Grid. And I would do that through a delivery system like Caza. And I would do that through a delivery system like Gain, which is our global agent investment network. It's our organization within EXP, right? And I would deliver that with the other small businesses that we own. And I was like, wow, I've really connected kind of like my purpose with making money. And I think that's why you hear energy and enthusiasm and don't get me wrong, like, it's Benson, you're a business owner. Like, there's times where I'm like, oh my God, I just want to go to Costa Rica, sit on a beach and do nothing. Bro, my brain hurts. This is hard, right? But I realize I probably just need a good night's sleep, and then maybe a day rest, and then I'm freaking wired again, and I'm like, let's go, right? I get excited.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have an amazing partner through this whole adventure, in your wife, who's been there all along the way. Like, how cool is that?
100%. Like, she's been game the whole time. She's my bit, I was like, babe, you started the first OG expansion business by opening a property management company 2.5 hours away from where we lived when you had a 2-year-old child, right? And you were our CFO. Like, she's been there the whole time. And, for those that are maybe working with their spouse, that didn't come without its friction,
Sure.
right? There was a point in our life, Benson, where like our pillow talk was like, did you get such and such? Did you get the P&L over to Benson? Right? I saw that Benson sent an email earlier today. Did you respond back? Like, and so we had to learn the boundaries as a couple around that. And that took me about a decade to figure out, Benson.
Right. I can imagine. And there's some strain there. Like, we're focusing on the wrong things. So, like, we need to turn off business at some point and just be family.
Yeah, we talked about it. Every morning we have an energy huddle within the company, right? And we do them themes. So there's like Motivational Monday, Tactical Tuesday, Wealth Building Wednesday, Thoughtful Thursday, Fit Friday, or sometimes Fun Friday. Well, today's Thoughtful Thursday, right? And we were talking about books that are not business related that have impacted our life. Oh, and one of the books that was given to me, or I think it was given to me, was the 5 Love Languages. And I wish, I told all the younger kids on our team, because I like hiring younger people and developing them. I was like, I wish that book had been given to me when I just got married, because there was definitely a disconnect between the way I gave love and the way she received it, and the way she was giving me love was totally in line with how I received it, acts of service. The way she received it was quality time, and the way I was giving it was words of affirmation and physical touch, right? Latino, right? Like,
Right.
te amo, baby, I love you, you're the best, right? Like all that. But she wanted quality time. Well, what's the one thing an entrepreneur is always what? They're always thinking about future, building, right? And so quality time was one of the hardest for me, right? In fact, I made it was such a kind of like a thing that I realized within a blind spot within our business, within my life and within our business, that I started testing everybody on what their 5 love languages were that came into my company. Because if somebody's was quality time, I knew that I needed to show up a different way, right? And I maybe would have to have a conversation with them about like how I'm not always great at this, but that I'm always working at getting better, and that I'm here for them, right? If they need me. So I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but
No, I asked
the
about your
relationship
wife.
with family.
Yeah, and then we talked about family, because it's a big part of it. Like, for the most part, most people aren't going to be on this path by themselves. So they got to figure out how to work with others, team members, that love language thing. Even though it sounds like it's a relationship book, it's also a relationship book with friends and coworkers, because you have to
100%.
interact with them too. And so I like how you were able to translate that into work too, because it's just a communication book, like meet people where they are, and that makes it easier for everywhere and for everyone. Man, such a good conversation today, Rob. We covered a lot of different topics, but I think my main takeaway here is that you've built this amazing community and network through both Caza and the Grid Network. And I'm sure there's lots of people here that would love to work with you on some level. And it sounds like you got different teams in different places, but the Grid Network is mostly everywhere. So if someone is interested in working with you, like, number one, who should contact you? And also, how can they contact you?
I think the first thing is just go to gridinvestor.com and you get a picture a little bit of the world that we have, right? We have locations. We just, from, LA to Detroit and everywhere, in between. We just launched in Palm Beach. We just launched in Tampa. So it gives you a good idea of the different real estate investment communities that we have and what we believe in, because we believe in helping empower the real estate entrepreneur. And from there, they could then follow us on all of our different Instagram handles. You could follow me at Rob Chevez, my Instagram handle, and just kind of reach out there. I'm still responding there and reach out to people there from there. But that gives them a good idea, Benson. They can go to gridinvestor.com and then see if there's a grid community in their area. And if not, maybe it's something that they want to build, right? Yeah. Maybe it's something that they want to lead and launch. What I realize that Grid is, Benson, at its core, is it's a leadership development platform for people, right? And, you run a community, you have to show up like a leader. And yes, it's a lead generation tool for that leader, but the room only grows to the size of the leader. And so if the leader can learn how to actually lead by giving and pouring into people and coming from contribution, that room grows and grows, and it pays dividends over time. And I find that it's a leadership development platform. And it's actually how we also find people to join, build teams with us, or join, our brokerage, or, even just invest with us, because we do investments with our grid leaders all around the country.
Amazing. Okay. So everybody check out that link. We'll put it in the show notes for everybody too, so you can just click it and go right to gridinvestor.com, where you can learn more about everything that Rob's working on, his team, and other entrepreneurs in your area. Potentially it sounds like you're looking for ambassadors as well in these different markets.
100%.
Leaders, which is what you call them. That's pretty exciting as well. But Rob, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a lot of fun talking to you, and I know that our audience is really going to enjoy this podcast.
Benson, it's been my pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And everybody, thank you for listening to this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Keep an eye out for more exciting guests like Rob Chevez in the future, where you can learn about entrepreneurship and business and a bunch of other things about making money. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Take care.